I'm Tom Corcoran, and my co-presenter here, Mandi. We're both solution architects with Red Hat, and we talk quite a lot to customers about integration challenges. And hopefully these challenges and the insight that we've got from those will prove helpful for you today. So what we're going to talk about, we're going to talk about the changing world of integration and why different approaches to integration are needed today. We'll talk about how Red Hat technologies can help, citing examples of some leading organizations of the successes they've achieved from those approaches. So we'll begin with the changing world of integration. So integration has been happening for 20 plus years now in various forms, from B2B to ESB to SOA to REST. So regardless of the technology that's been used in integration, the purpose of integration has been to connect different applications because most applications are not designed to talk to each other. And as organizations adopt newer applications, for example, SaaS applications, the need for integration is actually increasing now more than ever. So as we talk to our customers today, we find that the number of integrations required now versus even 5 years ago has exponentially increased. And not only has the quantity of integration increased, also the nature of integration has changed, necessitating a new approach. So there's increasing awareness of the fact that all companies need to become great software companies. We're all experiencing disruption in our industries. This is a link here to a New York Times article on what's happening in the car industry. Peter Schwarzenbauer, one of the guys featured in this article, makes the point that auto companies need to differentiate using software. BMW, for example, is experiencing new competition from electric cars like Tesla and from ride-hailing services like Uber. So BMW needs to reinvent itself. And software is a key way to do this. And this pattern applies across all industries. So in implementing digital strategies that are designed to disrupt, organizations are now adopting new development patterns. In other words, if you're seeking to differentiate using software, how you're developing and how you're delivering need to be different to how they used to be. So things like APIs, microservices, hybrid cloud, continuous integration and continuous delivery, or CI/CD, they're all becoming increasingly important. Why is that? Well, they assist speed of delivery, a factor that's becoming critically important today. They allow you to react and to capitalize fast on changing conditions, new threats, new opportunities in the marketplace. And control and security are also vital to execute these strategies safely. So integration also plays a key role in successful digital disruption. Integration allows you to connect the huge swathe of applications and application types that are now typically used in most organizations. From applications that are on-prem, to on-cloud, to SaaS applications, to in-house built API applications. For consumption by mobile devices, to newer IoT clients, to more traditional desktop and web applications. So you need integration to connect all of these together. And you can also connect or sometimes mash up existing data sources to create new services and to deliver new and engaging customer experiences. Because how you digitally interact with your customers and indeed with your partners and your suppliers can deliver a sustained competitive advantage. So legacy integration practices, they also need to change. So pre-existing integrations have typically been carried out using enterprise service buses or ESBs. Deployed centrally in the data center. Now, there's nothing wrong with this type of integration. It's worked fine for many years. But that type of integration model is getting much more difficult in the modern hybrid cloud world as microservices and agility start to gain prominence. in the modern world, you basically need to have, in the modern world, the centralized ESB starts to become a bottleneck and it starts to break down. So what you really need is to use integration where you want to use it and deploy integration where you want to deploy it. And as much as possible, co-locate the integration with the services that are being integrated. And as you're developing, integration should be part of your application development process. To do all of that, a new approach to integration is needed. So we suggest an approach called Agile integration. And with Agile integration, we start from two premises. Number one, nowadays you need agility, meaning fast delivery of services. And number two, pretty much every organization has an integration challenge to solve. And as we've mentioned, with a centralized ESB model, addressing these is much harder. So this brings us to our blueprint or our prescriptive set of recommendations for Agile integration. So what is Agile integration? It's an architectural approach that's based on three pillars. First of all, distributed integration. Secondly, containers. And third, APIs. I'll talk about each one. Distributed integration. It's lightweight. It's pattern-based. In other words, it's based on established enterprise integration patterns. It's decentralized, unlike legacy ESBs, which are centralized. And it's part of the application itself, as opposed to something that's bolted on afterwards. The second pillar is containers. Containers and container platforms are a way to host and a way to scale your distributed integrations. The immutability of containers also brings a high degree of stability. So a container can be built once, and then it can be, with the help of CI/CD, it can be promoted through the dev and the test environments right through to production, with only the configuration changing as you move through those environments. So the same container artifact, that can also be deployed across a range of target infrastructures, including bare metal on premises, virtualized infrastructure, private cloud infrastructure like OpenStack, or public cloud such as AWS or Azure. So the stability and the flexibility of containers are also strong contributors to agility. And the third pillar is APIs. So when APIs are used as the mode of communication between your services, and when they're exposed by your services, there's several important benefits. The first is stability. So by convention, an API should be stable over time, meaning that clients can integrate confidently, knowing that their integrations will not break over time, or at least very infrequently if they do, and that should be associated with some communication way ahead of time. APIs also increase the reuse and the reach of your services to a variety of client types, including traditional apps, to mobile and IoT apps, to internal consumers, that includes microservices, to external consumers like partners, suppliers, customers. And if managed properly, APIs can deliver a lot of tremendous value. So when you apply these three pillars to your application development and delivery, it enables integration to become part of your application development process. It enables you to integrate with new and existing data to deliver competitive advantage. And it enables you to develop, deliver, and deploy in a safe and stable manner. So what I'll now do is I'll hand you over to Mandi, who'll talk to you about how Red Hat can help.
Hi there. So I come from an application development background, and for about 16 years before I joined Red Hat, I actually worked for a proprietary software company. And my job as a consulting architect was to take our software and go out to customers and actually integrate it into their on-premise systems. So, I mean, I had to integrate with their CRM system, their provisioning system, their notification system, etc. So you can imagine over that period of time, I did a lot of integration work in various different ways. I did an awful lot of point-to-point integration, and I also did a lot of integration with magic CSV files that we passed around. So I can tell you that had I had a nice agile integration architecture like this to work in, it would have made a massive difference into our projects and our deployments. So today I'm going to talk to you about the technology that Red Hat has that you can take to implement your own API-Centric Agile integration architecture at your organization. So let's go. Okay, first of all, you need to create these distributed and lightweight integrations. And you're going to expose some APIs from those integrations. So to do that, there's a technology from Red Hat called Fuse. Now, like all Red Hat technology is based on open source projects, and the cornerstone project that is underneath Fuse is a project called Apache Camel. And Apache Camel is essentially the codification of the enterprise integration patterns. And these patterns were created by a couple of consultants like me. They were called Bobby and Gregor. And they went out and they discovered that they were doing integrations over and over again. And they were doing the same thing at different customers. And they thought, hey, cool, wouldn't it be a great idea if we actually wrote these down? So we didn't have to reinvent the wheel all the time. So they came up with a blueprint, essentially wrote a book. It's about this thick. I was going to bring it, but it was too heavy for my suitcase. And it's called the Enterprise Integration Patterns. And then along came another guy called James Strawn, and he said, you know what, guys, this is really awesome, but wouldn't it be great if we could codify that instead of having to rewrite it all the time? And so he created a Java language, basically, a Java framework that implements the 65 integration patterns that are in that book. And it's called Camel. And if you want to know why he called it Camel, come and find me in the booth later and we can talk about it. So, and then, of course, Red Hat came along and said, hey, our enterprises need this. Let's create a supported version of Camel, and we have Fuse. So, obviously, when you're doing integrations, you're going to pass messages around as well. And so you need a good, robust messaging platform underneath that. And that technology is called Red Hat AMQ, which is based on Apache ActiveMQ and Apache Cupid. Now, once you've got those integrations that you've written, whether it's microservices or some nano services or mini services or however you want to write your apps, you want to bundle those all up and run them on the Kubernetes platform for great ideas from Red Hat, which is called OpenShift. I know everyone's been talking about it today, so I don't need to tell you anything more about it, right? Cool. So we have now our integrations that are written, they're running them as containers on OpenShift, and now we've got all these APIs that we need to manage. So in our third pillar, our technology is Red Hat 3-scale API management. So, got it? Cool. Let's talk a little bit more about Fuse. So for all you application developers in the room who have used Fuse before, we're not changing it. It's still the Fuse that you know and love, and you can consume it in multiple different ways. So one way to consume it is standalone in a single JVM model, and that's what we call classic integration. But in an agile integration, we want to create these scale-out Fuse integrations. And so that's where we have Fuse to run on OpenShift. This is your cloud-native, integrate anywhere type of integrations. It's our agile integration. But then what about those of you who've got integration problems to solve, but you don't want to write code? Or maybe you can't write code. What you really need is a way to point and click and drag and drop. Have maybe an integration platform as a service. I can tell you that in the time I've been talking about Fuse at Red Hat, this is the single most requested feature from Fuse. And we have it today, Fuse Online. So it's don't worry about the online name, that's just meaning that it's browser-based, right? So it's a browser-based point and click, drag and drop. So it basically extends the power and flexibility of Fuse, but to those users who can't or don't want to write code. So a cool way to see it is I'm actually going to show you a short video demo of Fuse in action, Fuse Online in action.
Let's explore a quick example integration to see Fuse Online in action. We're going to showcase a classic cloud-to-ground integration scenario, where an organization has adopted Salesforce and they wish to synchronize that data with an on-premise database. So let's go ahead and start our integration. We're going to begin with Salesforce, and we're going to use the Event Streaming API to respond real-time to new events in Salesforce. In this case, we'll select any event where a new sales lead is created within our organization. Next, we're going to focus on where this data is going, which is in our database. In this case, we're going to invoke a stored procedure. Next, we need to map the data that's coming out of Salesforce to the parameters of the stored procedures in our database. To do that, it's a simple matter of pointing and clicking, mapping our source values to our target values. When we're done, we actually see a very nice summary of all the mappings in our integration. From here, it's a one-click operation to publish our integration so it's live in our environment. Behind the scenes, Fuse Online packages our integration as a container-native deployment that can be used on-premise or in the cloud. Now that our integration is live, let's actually go into Salesforce and see the integration in action. Here we are in Salesforce, adding a new lead, which will trigger the new event API and should kick off our integration. If we check a web app built on top of our database, we can see that yes, we've received the data from Salesforce.
Cool, eh? I love it. Now, I'm a dev, but I actually quite like that because I'm a bit lazy sometimes too, right? So I can hear, though, those integration experts in the room, you're going, yeah, no, I'm not going to use that. That's not for me. And you're actually right, it's not for you. It's for the other guys and girls who are not integration experts. They're ad hoc developers. And it's this group of people, actually, that Gartner says is going to be one of the biggest growth areas in integration moving forward. But you actually will benefit, because you imagine that those integrations, like we've just seen there, those JIRA tickets, they're not going on your board anymore. Yeah, they can stay on the other person's board. And in fact, maybe you can reassign some tickets to someone else. So there's benefits both ways. And those business users or those ad hoc developers in the room saying, oh yeah, but I'd never be able to push the button and release to production. Don't worry about that. This is all running on OpenShift. So the same governance model that you have, whether that's a DevOps deployment model where you can release straight to production, or whether you have more traditional change control processes where you actually have to have someone from operations that said, yes, I can release that. All those still apply. So both of those development models work, okay? So Red Hat AMQ. AMQ is a lightweight JMS 2.0 compliant messaging system. So you have your traditional queuing pub-sub broker as well as service-to-service interconnect. But now we talk about the single most requested, supported open source project that I was hearing about as well, Apache Kafka. So many customers have asked us to support Kafka. And we have it today, just GA'd on the 15th of this month, I think it was. It's called AMQ Streams. And if you have a subscription for Red Hat AMQ, you also have eligibility to have supported Apache Kafka running in OpenShift. Now, I can tell you that this is no mean feat because Kafka is stateful. So a lot of work went into having to work out how to make this work on OpenShift. All that work we did, so you don't have to. You can just have AMQ Streams. And then underneath that, the bottom one there, we have a preview of a SaaS offering for AMQ as well. So if you don't want to worry, you want a messaging platform, but you don't want to have to manage that yourself, you can get a SaaS offering, messaging as a service from Red Hat. Fuse Online, by the way, is also available as a SaaS offering. So the final technology, 3-scale API management. So remember that proprietary software company that I was talking about earlier? We actually implemented a RESTful API to make integrations easier. And it did. It really made a massive difference. But the biggest challenge that I had when using it was discovery of the APIs, actually finding which APIs there were and the documentation of those. It was all in a wiki, and we had a whole new team of people that had to update that documentation, et cetera. It was really a challenge. API was great, but actually discovering them was difficult. So when I saw 3-scale, the thing that really got me was the branded developer portal. So that's not the developer who's writing the APIs. It's the developer who's consuming them, or the business partner who's consuming them, right? The third parties who's consuming them. So essentially, and you can brand it with your custom branding, but here you have a single page with all of the APIs that are available, and you can see all the methods that you can use, and you can even try it out. And they become self-documenting because of our support for Swagger. But imagine being able to just type in the URL and push the try it out button, and you can see whether you've got your code right or not before you're doing a whole bunch of trial and error with your real code. Very cool. And then from an API management point of view, so the people who actually administer all these APIs, you have a single pane of glass to get an enterprise view of the APIs that are out there. And with this, you can then secure those, so you can put authentication controls around them, you can rate limit them, and then from a business point of view, you can also monetize those APIs. So you can extract the full value of these APIs that you've made available. Maybe even cover the cost of the platform itself by monetizing them, yeah? Now, 3Scale came to us via a different mechanism than a normal project, a normal open source project. So we actually had a different API manager a couple of years back, but we were looking for some different components, some different features. And so as we were out there exploring what was available in the open source community, we actually came across this platform that we thought, this is the one, but it was proprietary. And it came from a company called 3Scale. So we entered negotiations with them. We actually acquired 3Scale, and so we have then been working over the past couple of years to open source that platform. And so 3Scale is now completely open sourced. And we made the right call because it is an award-winning platform. These are a couple of the awards that we're really proud of that it's won over the last 2 years, including maintaining its leader quadrant up there in the Gartner Magic Quadrant. Tom, do you want to come and give us a couple of examples of agile integration in action?
Sure. Thanks, Mandi. So this approach, it works. And as testament to its impetus to produce innovation, agile integration adopters were 3 out of the 5 award winners for the 2018 Red Hat Innovation Awards. That's the international awards. I'll give you a little more detail on each one. The first example is UPS. They're a world leader in package delivery, and they use Red Hat Fuse to streamline their entire package tracking and delivery. Fuse allowed them to present a unified view of data from many disparate sources, some of which needed to be retrieved manually before. So when they then combined OpenShift as a deployment platform and a more DevOps-oriented approach, they were able to cut their development lifecycle times down from over a year to just a number of weeks. So radically reduced that cycle time. Second example is Lufthansa Technik. This is the world's largest independent provider of aircraft maintenance, repair, and overhaul, or MRO services. They created a digital platform for the aviation industry called Aviator. And they used Fuse to integrate both internal and third-party data sources. They used 3Scale API management to expose protected self-service APIs to both partners and suppliers. And they use OpenShift Container Platform running on Microsoft Azure to host and to scale their applications. They estimated the savings into the millions of euros due to the streamlined operations and the efficiencies that all of this brought. And the final example is D&M. D&M is Argentina's migration department. They oversee the movement of over 70 million people per year into and going out of Argentina. D&M is also responsible for fighting international crime as it impacts Argentina. So similar pattern to the others, they used Fuse, OpenShift, and DevOps practices, in their case, to unify national security information, which basically resulted in a much more easier way to both gather and to present data from multiple sources. It improved their access to information, both inside and outside of Argentina, which strengthened their ability to fight transnational crime. And finally, it resulted in much lower costs because they replaced proprietary solutions with open source ones. So another great success from Agile integration there. So I'll hand back to Mandi, who'll wrap up.
So kind of bottom line, right, to sum it all up, agility is your strongest resource, and integration is absolutely a key core capability. And these combined together form a powerful architectural foundation that's truly hybrid and will allow your organization to be competitive and innovative. And I want to share with you one more story before I go. So on my flight over here, I binged watched TED Talks, and I came across a talk by a guy called Knut Hanyes, and he was talking about why companies succeed. And he said, and I quote, that the real solution to quality growth is figuring out the balance between two activities: doing more of the same or continuing to exploit what you already have, versus exploring new ideas and innovation in order to stay ahead of disruption. And he also says that he doesn't think that it's possible for any of us to get a proper balance of those two things alone, that it's a team effort. So I hope that today we've inspired you to do some exploring and, of course, to make Red Hat part of your team. Thank you.